What's up, everyone? And if you said my blood pressure after reading the news, you're absolutely right. Today we have none other than Professor Mearsheimer again, a man who dissects geopolitics sharper than a sushi chef with vengeance. We'll explore how rational Iran is, the belligerent occupation of Israel, and the puppeteering role of the US. Here's a question to chew on before we hop in. How much influence does Israel have on American foreign policy?
Your latest book has a very interesting title, How States Think. How does Iran think regarding this now?
Neither Iran or the United States want to fight each other. It's the Israelis who have been trying to pull the Iranians and the Americans into a fight.
So they're being rational.
Oh, yeah, I think the Iranians were being rational. From an Iranian point of view, the smart way to deal with Israel is indirectly. It's to support Hezbollah, support Hamas, support the Houthis in Yemen, and so forth and so on. Support the militias in Iraq and in Syria as well. But from an Iranian point of view, you don't want to get directly involved unless you absolutely have to. And the Iranians thought, I believe, up until October 1st, that they could appease the Americans, appease the Israelis, they could get some sort of deal with the Americans so that Iran would avoid getting pulled into the conflict. It was on July 31st that Israel killed the Palestinian leader in Tehran. And it was not until October 1st that Iran retaliated. It's a long period of time. And that, I believe, is because the Iranians were looking for a way not to have to retaliate. The Americans were telling them, we'll get a ceasefire in Gaza. And once we get a ceasefire in Gaza, you, Iran, will not then have to retaliate against Israel. But of course, the Americans did not get a ceasefire. The Israelis went out and assassinated Nasrallah. And the Iranians understood enough is enough. So on October 1st, the Iranians retaliated with 180 plus ballistic missiles aimed at Israel. The Israelis have said they're now going to retaliate. And what the Iranians have said is, okay, you retaliate, we're going to counter-retaliate. And if you counter-retaliate, we will counter-retaliate. The Iranians understand that they have to go up the escalation ladder because there is no cooperating with the Americans and the Israelis to shut down this conflict.
How far can Iran go? What are the tools it has?
The Iranians can use their ballistic missile inventory to destroy oil fields and oil refineries in the region and cut off the flow of much of the oil out of the Middle East to the rest of the world. This would have catastrophic consequences for the international economy. And the mere threat of this has significant deterrent value. The Iranians, as you know, have been enriching nuclear material up to 60%, and it's quite easy for them to enrich up to 90%, which would give them enough fissile material for a few bombs. If Iran was to get a bomb, there are two possible consequences that are profoundly worrying. The first is you would undoubtedly get more proliferation in the Middle East. The Saudis, for example, have said that if Iran gets a bomb, we will get a bomb. And if Iran and Saudi Arabia have bombs, I would imagine the Turks, the Iraqis, and the Egyptians will not be far behind. So you would have a lot of nuclear proliferation in all likelihood if Iran gets a nuclear bomb. Can you imagine a crisis between a nuclear-armed Iran and a nuclear-armed Israel? That is really scary.
You mentioned the importance and the weight of the Israeli lobby on the US elections and the US foreign policy. What does AIPAC want from that president? What does Netanyahu want from that president? And in the end, what any of these two candidates will do?
What AIPAC and the lobby want from the United States, no matter who is the president, is unconditional support for Israel. They want the United States to back Israel no matter what Israel does. What Israel wants is exactly the same thing. Israel wants the United States to support whatever Israel does. If Israel needs more weapons, the United States should give Israel those weapons. If Israel needs diplomatic support at the UN or wherever, the United States should give Israel that diplomatic support. So the goals of Israel and the Israel lobby are synonymous. It doesn't matter, whoever is president will support Israel unconditionally.
All right, quick timeout, but hear me out. Mearsheimer just pointed out something that makes a lot of sense. Iran isn't charging into the ring because they know better. Instead, they play chess. Israel, however, they're trying to light up the whole board on fire and then ask Uncle Sam for another match. But here's my question for you folks watching. Do you agree that Iran is playing it smart while Israel keeps pushing for a fight they can't finish? Drop your thoughts below and don't hold back. Also, like for more content so we can expose the truth and call out the lies and keep pushing to the horizon of honesty. Let's hop back in.
Because of the power of the lobby.
As an American, how do you feel that your country's foreign policy is not actually your own?
Because of our relationship with Israel, we, the United States of America, are complicit in this genocide. So I think from a moral point of view, as well as from a strategic point of view, is America's unconditional support of Israel is wrong in the extreme. It's not in America's strategic interest to support Israel.
This brings me back to the question, how is this rational to the US? Is America being rational in this?
No. No, it's very important to understand that states do not always behave rationally. And in terms of the U.S. relationship with Israel over time, and certainly with regard to the U.S. relationship with Israel today, this is not an example of rational behavior. This is not strategic behavior.
If you got the chance for the next US president to listen to you, actually, what would you advise them to do?
Well, I would argue that the United States should go to great lengths to alter its relationship with Israel in fundamental ways. I think when Israel's interests line up with America's interests, the United States should support Israel. And when they don't, we should put enormous pressure on Israel to change its behavior. And I think the United States clearly has the leverage to tell Israel that it has two choices. One, it can have a greater Israel, but that greater Israel will have to be a democracy, one person, one vote. Or we can have a two-state solution, which will mean putting an end to the settlement enterprise, moving the settlers back into Green Line Israel, and giving the Palestinians a viable state of their own. So that'd be the first thing I would do. And then the second thing I would do is try to change relations with Iran, because that will foster stability in the greater Middle East. And it is in our interest, in America's interest, to have more stability in the broader Middle East, in addition to putting an end to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict.
Where do you see Netanyahu leading the region and the US with it?
Whether Netanyahu's in power or someone else is in power in Israel at this point in time doesn't matter at all. The Israelis are hardline in the extreme, and that's not going to change. If anything, Israel's going to become more hardline on the Palestinian issue with the passage of time. Israel is in a deep hole, and what they're doing is continuing to dig. And the belief is that they're going to fix this problem. They're going to create a new Middle East where Israel lives happily ever after. I don't think that's going to happen.
What about the Palestinians in all of this? We talk now about Iran, the US, Israel. What about the Palestinians? What's their future going to look like?
Well, the only agency that the Palestinians have is to rebel. I mean, there's not much else the Palestinians can do. They can resist. The Palestinians don't have a lot of outside support. The Houthis and Hezbollah have been fighting against Israel and fighting against the United States in defense of the Palestinians. But the Palestinians don't have many allies in the world. And they're really in a terrible situation. And this is why I worry greatly about their future. I mean, we're talking about a genocide in Gaza. Just think about that. The Israelis are bent on making Gaza unlivable. Well, if the Palestinians can't live in Gaza and they can't exit Gaza, that means they're going to die in Gaza. And of course, the Israelis are not just interested in cleansing Gaza, they're also interested in cleansing the West Bank. And the Palestinians in the West Bank are in good part defenseless, as are the Palestinians in Gaza, especially when they go up against Godzilla, which is the IDF. So the Palestinians are in an extremely, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, they are in an extremely difficult position.
All right, my fellow truth seekers, we've unpacked a lot today, from Iran's strategy to Israel's all-you-can-eat buffet of American support. If you agree, disagree, or you're still processing, drop your thoughts in the comments below. And hey, if you loved the content that exposes the inconvenient truth and makes you think twice, smash that like button and join the Zees Political Arrow family by subscribing. Why? Because someone's got to call out the geopolitical circus. And spoiler alert, it ain't the mainstream media. Until next time, stay sharp, stay critical, and remember, arrows don't lie. They just hit the target. See ya.